everyone, Tremayne here. Wanted to do this video real quick. To be honest with you, I was triggered. Yeah, I just got triggered after reading an article in Newsweek. But before I really get into that, I just want to warn you that this video may be a little bit longer than some of my normal videos because I just want to get this off of my chest. And whenever I'm triggered, I try not to be as emotional with my responses. I try to be as objective as possible. So this is like the first time I'm really openly going through this with you. This is something that I would normally go through with myself, but I thought I would share with you how I try to remain objective in my analysis of information that's given to me. So the reason why I got triggered is I was on Twitter, I like to read Twitter. That's my favorite social media platform. And I saw this particular article that was written by Newsweek come up. And basically, in a nutshell, I'll just read the headline really quick. It said, white privilege among un-American theories to be banned in federal programs. So basically, what that means is, and I'll just read it really quickly, that on Friday, September 4th, which was yesterday, well, the White House, they made a move to ban any federal agency that does any training that mentions critical race theory. And I'll talk a little bit more about what critical race theory is. But basically, if there's a training and they're talking about white privilege and the fact that whites benefit from racism, that's banned. That can no longer be spoken about in any trainings in the White House. Hey guys, I'm not gonna lie, that got me triggered. Now, one of the things that I do right off the bat, like it's really hard for me to listen to President Trump as far as his delivery style, and it's just a leadership preference thing, his delivery style. So what I do is I normally go to whitehouse.gov and I just get it in black and white. I just read it in black and white. So this is an official document from his office. As you can see at the top, executive office of the president. And basically it's outlining what the newsletter article was saying. And I just want to point, I'm not going to read this whole thing, and I'll probably put this link in the description. But just wanted to point out a few things really quick here. Give me a second here. One of the things that I wanted to point out is that they were saying the basis of this is that these type of trainings, they not only run counter to the fundamental beliefs for which our nation has stood since its inception, but they also engender division and resentment within the federal workforce. So that's the basis. The basis of this whole thing is, and to a degree I get it, is that the Trump administration is saying that our core values from the inception are all about all men created equal. And it goes on to say in this document that the president has a track record of holding up the rights for all people, and that if there are any snubs against races or anything like that, he's willing to address it. So, objectively speaking, I see what he's saying. Now, let me just get a little bit more on critical race theory. So, just so we see what literally is being taken out of the federal government as far as training. Now, critical race theory, and I'm just going to read this one part. Here it says, critical race theory proposes that white supremacy and racial power are maintained over time, and in particular that the law may play in a role in that process. So basically what critical race theory is, it's a framework that says that they're going to look closely on race, law, and power. So the Trump administration is saying that white supremacy doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So why are we putting it in our training? So fundamentally, I have issues with that, but we're not going to get into my issues personally. We're not going to get into my issues personally. But it is, to be honest, it is hard for me to totally understand where they're coming from when I understand American history. So one of the things that I try to do is I'm a big history buff, and I try to understand American history as much as possible. And not the American history that we're taught in our textbooks. I'm talking about the full scope of American history. And one of the things that's noted and documented, Thomas Jefferson always believed that slavery would split the Union. And that's here I googled it. Yeah, Thomas Jefferson always believed that if anything was going to split the Union, it was going to be slavery. Okay. And then also some of the founding fathers, they believed that slavery was a violation of the laws of nature. They thought it was wrong in principle, and they felt it was evil. So even though slavery lasted for hundreds of years, these founding fathers, whether they consciously, subconsciously, and consciously believed that the institution of slavery was inherently evil. Although they benefited from it, they did believe it was inherently evil. So, as you know, there was a civil war, and on the Confederate side, there was a man by the name, I have a picture of him right here. His name is Alexander Stevens, who was the vice president of the Confederate. And he's most famous for his speech called the Cornerstone Speech. Now, you can Google all these things. You can find what I'm talking about, but I want to try to keep this as short as possible. And in the Cornerstone Speech, what he made very clear in the Cornerstone Speech is that he announced that the Confederate government was going to be founded on the basis that the idea of blacks were inferior to whites. And he believed, this Vice President Stevens, he believed that Thomas Jefferson and the founding fathers were wrong about their argument of all men being equal. He fundamentally believed that all men weren't equal. So that's where I see a conflict. Now, before I move on, if this is making sense to you, please put a like on it. If I'm losing you, put in the chat, hey Tremayne, you're losing me. So I know where you're at. Just put it in the comment right there. But I just want to get a gauge before I move on. Like, are you following me? Are you following me? I wanted to bring a historic precedence to it. So that's where the conflict for me. It's hard for me to accept almost hundreds of years later of what's going on as far as with this band. I get it. I understand what he's trying to say in theory, but until there is a reckoning with those that descend from slaves in terms of economic reparative justice, then moves like this may be a little bit immature. They may be a little bit immature. Like, if you're going to do that, at least address that, hey, these things happened. We moved on from it. Like, there was no, and maybe he did address it, and I'm not seeing it, but I'm just saying how it was done, how this particular memorandum was executed. It could have been done better. But anyway, I'm not here to get into that. But in the fabric of America, there is this, no matter what side of the fence you're on, there is this common theme of what do we do with these black people that descend from slaves that we haven't dealt with in over 100 years. So without getting into that and going deep in it, that's a whole nother video. If you want me to do a video about that, I can do a video about that. But this is what I want to leave you with here. Now, generally speaking, anytime someone or a group of people are grieving the death or the loss of something that they cherished, they go through these 5 stages. Okay? So This is a pretty common thing called the 5 stages of grief. So in the first stage of this is denial, denial. And to be honest, when I read that article, when I look at the memorandum from the White House with this ban of using any type of white privilege speak in the trainings, what I sense is a denial happening. There's a denial that something happened, and you're denying that it happened, and you're denying that the fact that we moved on from it. Like it's no longer a part of our social fabric anymore. There's a denial happening. And I get it. I understand why you would deny it. Because I believe America, let me be specific, white America is grieving the loss of how it used to be. And this is what I was talking about in my last video, is America on the brink of destruction. I can tell you there is a huge denial going on the state of these blacks that descended from slaves. Because it seems like that's the centering ground of both parties of they're fighting. And that leads us to the next one, anger. Why do you think there's so much tension and anger going on right now? Because of this denial. And hey, I'm going to share with you, it's only going to get hotter. This anger and this tension is only going to get even higher. Watch, bear witness, as we get closer to the election, oh man, it's going to be crazy. Even after the election, no matter who gets voted in the office, the anger is going to be at an all-time high. And that could last years. That anger and tension could last years, if not move to this next phase. If there's not a bargaining, if there's not a reckoning of the fact that this group of people, which I'm included in, have been disenfranchised and haven't been repaired, haven't been made whole, economically speaking. If there's no bargaining over that, and as you see, this lady has justice. If justice is not really done, like really at the root, and I'm not talking about police brutality reform, police reform, that's the symptom. That's not the root of this thing. That's not the root. I'm talking about fixing the root cause. If there's not a bargaining, if there's not a reckoning with that, it's going to continue. Once we do get to some of that reckoning, bargaining, you're going to see a depression set in. And that depression can take the form of an economic depression, people being depressed, individuals, cities, counties at the federal level, until there's a full acceptance. That's when we can begin to do those things and saying, hey, all men are created equal. We're living up to the values that the forefathers set out. But if you're going to remove these things, understand what you're doing. I don't think they understand what they're doing by just removing these things and not being sensitive. So I'm going to leave you with that. This is not for me to give an answer. I'm just doing an analysis. This is how I would go through. This is how I go through these things when I'm triggered by the news. This is my process. I try to get grounded and rooted in fact and reality and looking at the whole picture. So with that said, if you want me to continue this conversation, if I get 3 likes on this, I'll continue this conversation. I just need 3 likes. If you made it this far, what I'm saying is interesting to you. So please do that. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and then share it if you want to. Peace.